Hello, everyone. This is Anae Augustini with CID Insurance Programs. Welcome to Houses of Worship, Opportunities for Production Growth webinar. And I want to do a few introductions before we actually get started into the core of the webinar. I'm the CEO at CID Insurance Programs, and I want to introduce Michelle Belden, who's our nonprofit underwriter here at CID.
Morning, everyone.
Kristen Hazard is going to be our instructor today. She's Vice President of the Nonprofit Package Division at USLI. And then Jacob Cole is our marketing specialist. He's the behind-the-scenes guy who makes everything run smoothly for you and runs a lot of our runs all of our marketing that you get to see daily. So let's move on, and I'll just do some logistics. So we just we've got everybody on mute because there's too many people to be trying to talk amongst ourselves. So you will not be able to speak. However, I encourage and really want you to type in questions into our chat room at any time throughout the webinar, and we'll stop and take a moment and answer those questions for you. Kristen's a really knowledgeable instructor, well-versed in nonprofit churches, and we'll be talking about some other nonprofits. And I'm going to turn it over to her now so she can go right into the webinar objectives.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anae. And thank you, everyone, for your time and attention today. And again, don't forget that at any point, if I say anything confusing or maybe interesting, I hope there's something interesting shared here, that, feel free to just jump in with any questions, and we'll answer them as they go. But the objective today is to really kind of share what the opportunity is. I think a lot of times when we hear about nonprofit and the nonprofit sector, you might think that it's a small niche. You'd be surprised, and hopefully we can share that it is a much larger opportunity you might be aware of. We'll talk a bit about the coverage because it is unique, and nonprofits have absolutely unique needs. And then we'll talk a little bit about how what you need from the application and how to get a quote as quickly as possible. So our goal really together between CID and myself is we really want to be the most effective and efficient solution for you. We've really worked hard on developing our products to be priced effectively for the nonprofit sector because, again, they have that challenge that they need to provide services to their community. In this case, with houses of worship and churches, it's worship. And so they need to be able to also afford insurance to cover all of their needs. But their primary concern is going to be serving their community. And we understand that. So we offer those products that are specifically designed for nonprofits in that manner. And we're also looking to put as many lines of coverage together for you on one policy. So you only need to do one application. You're only working with one underwriter. That really, at the end of the day, helps to improve renewal retention and just makes it a lot easier to keep track. And so that's our goal. But one surprising thing that we want to also share is that you have that ability to both quote these nonprofits over the phone or over the web. I do like to put a little commercial out there just for that phone quote number, that 877-969-7359. That will direct you to an actual underwriter who works on nonprofits day in, day out. So even if you're not entirely certain what rating information you need to gather, or you're at the beginnings of that application, or it's a very small account, why fill anything out? Just call that number. And after about a 5 or 10 minute conversation, you'll have all your questions answered, but you'll also have a quote. And we find oftentimes when people use the phone, we're binding 10 points higher than what we do through our other channels. But again, we have options. And of course, if you like to submit, you already have your applications all filled out, send those over to Michelle at cidinsurance.com. So to talk specifically about the houses of worship opportunity, there's over 350,000 houses of worship in the United States. And, I think if I talk to you about, let's say, Starbucks or any specialty coffee shop, you probably think that's one of the most prevalent things. But there's only 32,000 of those. Or fast food restaurants, where there's 247,000. But you could see that the church sector really is astoundingly bigger. And some of that's because, even though you may think of the larger church with the big steeple and all that, there are so many more that actually may be renting space from that exact church or at a school or in a movie theater. And so there's a lot that's out there. And we see about 4,000 new places of worship open every year. And those are the ones that I just kind of told you about. They're not big enough yet to have their own building, but they do want to get together. They want to worship in their own way with their own little community. And so those are all popping up across the country. And sometimes they struggle to find coverage because they don't have an established history. We can be a wonderful solution for them. And the last thing I want you to think about is that there's over 100,000 social and human service organizations that are typically affiliated or work in conjunction with churches. This may be a new revenue stream for you. So if you know you're working with a church today that maybe hosts a thrift store, a soup kitchen, maybe they're working together with a women's shelter, you can be a solution provider for those organizations as well with this same easy-to-use quoting process through CID. So from a trend standpoint, we're seeing a lot of activity and a lot of changes with regards to the religious institution world. In past years, there have been companies suffering from very poor underwriting results. There's catastrophes, hail, wildfires. It's all created some challenges out there. And because of that, they've either had to raise rates, they've had to non-renew in certain areas, they've tried to increase use of exclusions and deductibles. There might even be more underwriting that makes it a little bit more difficult. Perhaps last year you were able to write a building that was 50 years old, and now that's considered an old building and they don't want it anymore. So because of that, I think we're seeing a lot more churches saying, hey, can I get some other options? Is there anybody else that can help me? And I noticed we first just had a question about customizable flyers, and I guess we do have ability to ship that over to CID, and I guess I could let Anae answer that question.
Sure. Well, and absolutely, we do have. We might even have one currently on our website that's designed and it's made for brokers to be able to put their own information on it, customize it for yourself. But we can work with you even and go further than that if you have a concept in mind relative to churches or a house of worship product. We would be glad to. I'm sure Jacob would be a volunteer to assist you with creating a piece for your office. So. Please contact us either through myself, Anae, at CID Insurance Programs, and at CID Insurance, or Jacob at CIDinsurance.com.
Awesome, thank you. So yeah, all in all, I do think that's a great idea because they are looking for options. So what are we talking about? Well, houses of worship is a really broad area. And the reason why I keep saying houses of worship instead of churches, because it would be much easier to just say churches, is that houses of worship really factor in a lot of different faiths and denominations, ones that may be very structured, ones that may be very loosely structured. They could be startups, they could be storefronts. They may be independent of other common denominations. So we want to be as all-encompassing and as inviting as possible to the variety of different types of religious groups that may be out there. And that's why we distinctly use houses of worship as a word. So where we rate and what we're looking at is we look at square footage, and that's square footage dedicated to church operations. I say that specifically because you may find that your church, your house of worship, may also be involved in other types of activities. So the rating basis is really going to be focused on what's dedicated to house of worship activities, and then we can look at the other operations just based on whatever rating basis may apply to them. For now, that phone quote I was telling you about earlier, that's really going to be more designated to the more simple church, so 30,000 square feet and under. But through submission, you can really, there's no limit to the size that you can submit, as CID has options for the small to large house of worship. And remember too that the things that they may commonly have issues with, things like if they have a food bank, they might have childcare, they might be doing some mission work, they might have counseling. All of those things are what we can consider. We just need to underwrite to those exposures. Now, the coverage that's available is very comprehensive. First of all, we don't have liability deductibles, and all of our coverage offerings will provide personal and advertising injury, which is really key when you think about the activities of a church, and the fact that you've got someone preaching, you've got written materials, and so they could potentially be talking about different individuals, and hopefully it's always in a positive light, but they may need to call upon having that personal and advertising injury aspect to their policy, and we do provide that. We also look to offer the higher non-owned auto, and our church members are automatically included as additional insureds. The property is pretty standard in that, many times we're doing contents, building coverage, the Torah coverage. If you have a synagogue, we can do that as well. And theft, employee dishonesty are always items that are usually requested. Umbrella is also available. We can do up to $5 million umbrella over top of that, and that's usually what is needed. Now, these are pretty vanilla coverages that I'm kind of sharing with you. There's definitely a lot more that we do. So to get into a little bit more detail, I like to think of this as what really sells the quote, because you've got a lot of clients that may just want to get a price and get it quickly, but at the end of the day, I think you want to know that you're providing them very strong coverage that will effectively protect them for all the different little scenarios that they may get into from an operations standpoint. So, first of all, we do tout that we have very low minimum premiums. Our company is really out there to provide the best solutions for smaller organizations. So we know that a lot of times they have limited budgets. So the lowest minimum premium is really going to be key. Just as an example, in California, it would be $405. Outside of there, we started about $500 for an admitted quote. Special events. Special events are really common to nonprofits and houses of worship, so we're able to offer that within the annual policy. It's built in up to 1,000 attendees, and that's usually a really key item because they don't want to have to get multiple policies to address their operations. Pastoral professional liability. It is a critical coverage for any church that has clergy members providing advice to the community, and so it's important because it's very sensitive conversations. They may be helping people with marriage counseling. It might be helping youth who are struggling to, as they're, getting into their adolescence and whatnot. And these are very sensitive times. So we're able to provide that coverage up to $1 million. And it's been recently reduced pricing. So I say that only that if you've tried us in the past, you may want to reconsider submitting again this year and find that we might be able to compete a lot more strongly with our offering now. Also, the abuse and molestation is a common thing that a lot of houses of worship look for. And sometimes they may not be able to afford large limits. So just to make you aware that we do have a low limit available at $100,000, $300,000 for no additional premium. But we can go all the way up to $1 million limit, so that's for a flat charge. So, just let us know what options you might need, and we are able to address that as they are. But again, it's something that's key because you think about most church operations, they're working with youth, they're working with the elderly. These are protections that they're going to want to have in place. The directors and officers liability is also a key element that's often overlooked. Any church that has a board is making decisions that impact the community that they're serving. And they're very sensitive decisions that they may be making. I mean, even think about a church that owns a cemetery and just their work in trying to keep people's loved ones' final resting places in a condition that they should be. Think about, just how they're spending the money. If they're taking that weekly tithing and putting it towards the fine robes for the pastor as opposed to putting towards food for the community, people are going to be concerned and they may actually bring suit against the church. So this is a great protection, as they're making decisions. And we have a lifetime occurrence reporting provision, which is true of all of our nonprofit D&O. This is a key piece because it gives an individual director or officers on the board a lifetime tail. And that's key in the event of a future board potentially canceling or non-renewing coverage, and then the church is then bare. So we like to be able to protect those people who put the policy in place with that lifetime occurrence reporting provision. We also have third-party discrimination and harassment coverage. This also may be key when you think about a church that may not, or may be allegations that they're discriminating. They make decisions that they have an ability to discriminate, but they always have to defend themselves, and so this is where that would come into play. So we're talking at the beginning a little bit about opportunities to write more business. And of course, the churches are one sector, but we also talked about some of the service-related organizations that go hand in hand with these religious entities. Think about it, they're oftentimes using the facilities to carry out their own operations, but they also may be serving on that church board, but also on that halfway house board or shelter. So there's probably one person who's a touch point to multiple nonprofit organizations. We write a wide variety of these service-related organizations, such as food banks and counseling services and working with youth. To get into a little bit more detail so you have some context, food and clothing services are probably the most common, and I think you probably heard a lot about them in the news recently, with the past federal government shutdown. It's the first thing that people turned to because they needed assistance. When you have very little in savings, you need to be able to put food on the table. You need to make sure that your kids have clothes. So these are very critical organizations that exist in the community, whether or not they're related to a church. We rate these based on square footage, and we look at the total value of donated goods or total annual meals served in the event that they're providing food. And this would be anything from like a Meals on Wheels program to, like I said, just a normal food bank. We look at residential facilities, where they're providing this temporary shelter for individuals who are really struggling, whether it's because of substance abuse or maybe their home has been destroyed and they need assistance for a little bit of time. Maybe it's because their child is having medical care at a local hospital or at a hospital that's not local, and they're working through a Ronald McDonald type house and looking for housing. So all of those are things that we can consider. We look again at the square footage and the number of counselors or social workers, case managers, whatever the case may be, and then we arrive at our rating basis. I should mention that when we're looking at these service-related organizations, similar to the churches, we have that general liability. We also have an E&O component built in along with an abuse and molestation component. Counseling services are also another area that are increasing, whether for-profit or nonprofit. We're looking at substance abuse, anger management, even mental health, some animal therapy, helping people get back to gainful employment, whether they're just teaching them how to fill out resumes or whatever the case may be. Again, similar to some of these other products areas, we're looking at square footage and number of counselors. And youth outreach, this is an area where I feel we've seen the most significant increase, because if you think about schools, they just don't have the budget anymore to provide these different programs, whether that be the science and technology, robotics camps, mentoring, after-school programs, and the variety here. But we're able to do that, again, same rating basis as what we were talking about earlier. We look at number of teachers as well. And finally, senior outreach. I think a lot of churches tend to be involved in this, but they may know other organizations and support other organizations that are providing this senior outreach. And if you look at our population, it's an aging population. So people want to stay in their homes and they want just assistance in taking care of their, aging parents or possibly themselves. Caregivers and home health care aides will probably be the largest class you'll see in the next 10 years. And it's projected to have a 26% growth in the employment area. So just something to consider that we're able to help for you. And then, of course, really any type of not-for-profit that may be associated. These are things that we can look at, whether you need the standalone coverages or if you're looking to put an annual policy together. There's a lot here. So, the most important thing is, of course, if you've got this opportunity, you've got this contact, how do you provide them solutions as quickly as possible and ones that are robust? Well, you can actually get these quotes over the phone, and or you can quote online. Just select the nonprofit package tab, and that will get you to a point of where you can select the different type of area, whether that's houses of worship, whether it's a community association or like a theater group. You'd be able to find options there. And if you struggle, there's a web chat feature if you're quoting online. Of course, they're available to help you and answer any questions you might have. Now, some of the benefits of using this instant quote platform is that, and this is true of, I guess, if you submit an application as well, our quotes will come with a pre-filled application. That way, let's say your information isn't on the supplemental we're looking for, we're able to transfer what you've given us into the supplemental that we're going to require at binding. If you like the number, awesome. If you like the terms, wonderful. Then you're pretty much ready to go. You just need to verify everything that we might need to still know in order to bind, and then get it signed. But you also get these opportunities to interact with underwriters, and you can better explain the risk and potentially even access more credits because we're able to discuss why this is a good church versus another sort of organization. But all in all, I really want to thank you for your time today and open up the floor to questions, and just remind you that if you do have an application right now, take a look at what you have and what's coming up, or maybe something that you sent to somebody else in the past. You want to see how we can compete, just send it over to submissions@cidinsurance.com or contact Michelle there. But I'll turn it back over to Anay.
All right. Thank you so much, Kristen. The information was it was super valuable, and I hope that everyone gets an opportunity to submit a nonprofit. Last I want to say is Jacob will be sending out a recorded version. You will be able to find it also, a recorded version of this webinar on our website as well under resources, webinars. And but he's going to send you out a link to it so that you can watch it again at your convenience, or have other people in your office watch it. He will also make sure that you have an application on hand. And I do as well as agree with Kristen that their phone quote system is wonderful. It's a fast way without needing an application to be able to get a quote for a house of worship or any kind of nonprofit that you might be looking to get a quote on. So unless I'm missing something, I think that that will be it. Please join us for future webinars. You can find them on our website as well under resources, webinars. All right. Thank you for joining us.